William Wallace, the man, the myth, the martyr in the mists of medieval Scotland. When the land echoed with the clash of steel and the cries of rebellion, a single name rose above the rest: William Wallace. But who was he? A savage outlaw, patriotic hero, a dangerous myth, carefully sculpted long after his death. This is not just the story of a man, it is the story of an idea so powerful that it terrified kings and inspired nations. The execution that shocked the world on a bleak August day in 1305, the streets of London were choked with spectators. They'd come to witness not just an execution, but a messaging land's final word to anyone daring to challenge its crown. Dragged through the mud by horses, William Wallace was paraded like an animal, bound and bloodied. His crime? Treason against King Edward I? But here lies the twist that electrified history. Wallace never swore loyalty to Edward. By law, he could not commit treason against a king he never served. His trial was a performance, and the outcome had been written before it began. His death was brutal, hanged, disemboweled, quartered, his body scattered across Scotland as a warning. Yet instead of extinguishing his cause, England had created a legend, the mystery of his origins. Before Wallace became a thorn in England's side, he was almost invisible in Scotland's historical record. No royal birth, no noble claim. Some accounts say he was born around 1270 near Elderslie, the son of a minor knight, but others insist he was from Fife. The truth, nobody is sure. The fog of history swallows much of his early life. What we do know is this: Wallace was educated, unusually so for a man of his station. He could read Latin, he could wield both words and weapons. Perhaps it was this rare combination intellect and ferocity that made him so dangerous. The spark of rebellion Scotland in the late 13th century was a land in chains. After the death of Alexander III, the Scottish throne was disputed. England's Edward I, Longshanks, the Hammer of the Scots, took full advantage. He placed a puppet king, John Balliol, on the throne, then stripped him of authority, treating Scotland like a conquered province. The people starved. The English garrisons ruled with iron fists. And then came the moment that lit the fuse. A minor skirmish in Lanark. 1297. Wallace reportedly struck down William Heselrigg, the English sheriff. The story varies. Some say it was revenge for the murder of Wallace's wife. Others claim it was simply an attack against tyranny. Either way, Wallace fled to the hills. But soon, he was not alone. Outlaws, farmers, and patriots rallied to him. From the shadows, a rebellion was born. The battle that defined him. If there is one moment that immortalized Wallace, it was the Battle of Stirling Bridge in September 1297. Picture it. The English, heavily armed and vastly superior in number, march confidently across the narrow bridge. They believed Scotland's ragtag army would scatter before them. But Wallace had studied the terrain. He waited, patient, letting half the English cross before unleashing his trap. The Scots surged forward, hacking and slashing, the bridge itself bottlenecking the enemy. Horses fell into the river. Knights were dragged down and drowned in their armor. By the day's end, the mighty English army was shattered. Wallace, against all odds, was victorious. It was not just a battle won, it was a declaration. Scotland could fight back. From hero to guardian of Scotland, Wallace's triumph made him more than a warlord. He was named Guardian of Scotland, ruling in the absent king's name. For a moment, it seemed as though freedom was within reach. But glory is a fragile crown. The nobles who had first rallied to Wallace soon betrayed him. Rivalries, jealousy, and fear fractured Scotland's unity. In 1298, Edward I returned with vengeance. At Falkirk, Wallace faced the full fury of England's army. Though his Shiltron formation's great circles of spearmen held against cavalry, English archers rained death upon them. The Scottish army broke. Wallace vanished into obscurity. Some say he went to France to seek support from King Philip IV. Others claim he roamed Scotland, waging guerrilla war. His whereabouts remained shrouded in mystery. The betrayal every hero's tale has its Judas. For Wallace, it was Sir John Menteith. In 1305, Wallace was captured near Glasgow. Whether sold out for English gold or to save his own skin, Menteith's betrayal delivered Scotland's most defiant son into Edward's hands. Brought to London, Wallace stood trial in Westminster Hall. He was denied the chance to speak in his defense. His sentence was already sealed. Yet when accused of treason, he uttered words that echoed through time. "I could not be a traitor to Edward, for I was never his subject." Defiance to the last breath. The making of a myth, so why does William Wallace endure? Why, centuries later, does his name ignite passion and pride? Part of the answer lies in Blind Harry, a 15th century poet whose epic, The Wallace, transformed history into legend. In his verses, Wallace became larger than life, a knight of unstoppable courage. A man who single-handedly struck terror into England. Of course, much of it was fiction, yet the story mattered more than the facts. Wallace became a symbol of resistance, a banner for the powerless, a reminder that tyranny can be defied. Even centuries later, the idea of Wallace was powerful enough to inspire revolutions, uprisings, and yes, even Hollywood blockbusters. Beyond Braveheart, when we hear Wallace's name today, many think of Mel Gibson's Braveheart. Blue war paint, stirring speeches, the cry of freedom. But the real Wallace was more complex. A rebel, yes. A warrior, yes. But also a man caught in the brutal politics of medieval power. His struggle was not simply against England, it was also against Scotland's own divided nobility. Perhaps that's what makes his story timeless. Wallace was not a perfect hero. He was flawed, fallible, human, and yet in his defiance, he became eternal. The legacy that outlived him, Wallace died in 1305, but less than a decade later, Robert the Bruce, once Wallace's rival, picked up the mantle. At Bannockburn, in 1314, Bruce achieved what Wallace could not, a decisive victory that forced England to recognize Scottish independence. Without Wallace, there may never have been a Bruce. Without Wallace, the dream of freedom might have withered before it took root. His life was short, his rebellion incomplete, but his legend lit a fire that outlived him by centuries. Conclusion: the power of one who was William Wallace, a farmer's son, a guerrilla fighter, a martyr, a myth. The truth is, he was all of these and none of them. What we know is that when Scotland was on its knees, Wallace stood tall. When silence was safe, he spoke. When surrender was wise, he fought. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we still remember him not as a man of flesh and blood, but as the embodiment of an eternal cry: freedom.